My name is Paul Andrews, and this is my story of how my wife's personal hygiene destroyed our marriage and family. My now ex-wife's name is Sarah Ridgway Andrews. We met on a blind date arranged by mutual friends. She had just graduated from college and was working at First United National Bank. Her degree in business management qualified her for entry into the associate management program. I had just started working at Allied Accounting and was new in town, so one of my co-workers, Steve, set us up on a double date. Steve and Brenda had been dating for about 6 months, and they decided that Sarah and I would have common interests. Nothing beats the excitement of an evening when an accountant and a business intern go on their first blind date. It was very obvious that we had one thing in common. We had no intention of having sex that evening. I would rather have this average-looking blonde woman rub her body against me. But this did not happen, as she behaved very warily, afraid of my touch. If she had curves, she certainly hid them behind a heavy sweater, long skirt, and jacket. We had a stimulating conversation about our career expectations. We both expressed our dreams for the future. Surprisingly, they turned out to be very similar. We both came from middle-income families living in smaller communities than our current big city. I wanted to become an entrepreneur and use my accounting education to be able to differentiate between a good deal and a good deal. She wanted to have a stable life while climbing the corporate ladder, constantly moving up, with the exception of 2 or 3 times when she went on maternity leave to have children. This gave me some confidence that one day someone would have sex with her, maybe even more than 2 or 3 times. The evening ended with me walking her to her apartment, where she quickly hugged me without passion and thanked me for the evening. It was better than drinking beer alone in his small apartment. On Monday, Steve came into my office and greeted me. I commented it like this: "You must have really relaxed with Brenda on Saturday night to give me a high five?" Steve smiled. "Yes, everything was fine on Saturday evening, but I congratulated you. Sarah couldn't stop talking about you to Brenda. You made a big impression on this girlfriend of mine. She told Brenda to tell you to call her, just like in junior high, isn't it?" It was a pleasant evening, but I don't think it was all that impressive. I think I better call her. Apparently, Sarah knew better than I that we could make a great couple. After a few months of dating, I learned what was hidden under those heavy clothes. This woman could be a Playboy Playmate beauty, big round breasts, a firm, flat stomach, and well-shaped hips. Hips that greet the man who has won her heart. I was mesmerized by the gorgeous ass as she got up from my bed to go to the bathroom. She told me that in high school, she turned into a gorgeous woman, and to her horror, she was constantly groped and pestered with proposals. She tried to dress conservatively so as not to attract unwanted attention. Through a combination of great sex, a wonderful personal relationship built on admiration, trust, and caring for each other, we found our love. The marriage was a foregone conclusion, as were the 2 children, Hannah and Miranda. Sex was great before we had kids, and amazing after we had them. We bought a starter home and the obligatory minivan. Sarah moved up the career ladder and began to take on more responsibilities. I was doing very well at Allied Accounting and was given a leave of absence to get my CPA. Mr. Karstadt, the owner of Allied, took me under his wing and taught me much more than any book or course ever could. One day after work, he asked me to go to lunch with him. He told me he was in talks to sell the firm to a large accounting group. "Paul, you are my best employee, but you won't thrive under the new owner," he said. "I think you should leave Allied before the buyout and start your own practice. They will kill your entrepreneurial spirit, and you will remain an unhappy person going to work every day. You have an entrepreneurial spirit that you must realize. Please take note and start planning for your future. I'll make sure you take a few clients with you when you leave so you don't starve." It took me by surprise, and I didn't know what to say other than thank you to the man I admired and respected. Over the weekend, Sarah and I discussed this topic nonstop. "Don't stop there and remain an employee of the new company," she said. "Forget about risky business and work hard to get a promotion in the coming years. You can make good money working as an accountant in a large company. Yes, if this was what I wanted to do for the next 35 years. Sarah, I'm afraid I'm going to resent the debits and credits I have to deal with every day. This is my chance to break out of the routine and do what I have dreamed of since my school days. To begin with, I will work here at home while I build up a clientele, and then I will move to the office. Paul, I think this is an unwise move. We have 2 small children, we can't take any more risks, was her wise advice from a banker. I can't wait until the end of my life to take a risk. For me, it's now, or maybe never. Sarah pouted. I don't like it, but I can't stop you. Make sure this works, otherwise I'll be very angry with you. And in general, don't expect me to finance this disaster. I'm opening a new checking account for my income. I'll pay half of the household expenses. You better be able to cover the other half. I'll do my best, Sarah, I answered, but I wanted to say, and thanks for that, bitch. She pulled herself together and said that she would not participate in any loans for my new business. If everything goes wrong, she wants to be on the sidelines. Since she acted like a bitch, I had no intention of dealing with her bank, but I'm sure she will be there when I start making big money. Over the next year, things got tough as Sarah brought home a steady stream of money and my contributions came and went. By the end of the second year, I was making a little more than Sarah, but she would prefer that I create a consistent monthly income. Boring. My business model was changing as I became more involved in advising on potential deals rather than just keeping track of money received and spent. It was what I wanted to do, and I was successful at it. Since I was making more money than Sarah, I started investing more in my startup business. I set my personal income at Sarah's level and invested amounts in excess of it. What I liked to do was that if I had an outstanding prospect, I would reduce or forgive my consulting fee to get a share of the profits. I would take 5% to 15% ownership for my consulting services and reduce the fees for the monthly accounting portion of their business. This worked very well for both parties. This reduced the required startup capital for potential clients and gave them the opportunity to receive my informed analysis and recommendations at any time. It was impossible to audit the company because I was an investor, but this suited me quite well. The increase in the company's value was much greater than the accounting fees I lost. The company could buy me out at any time based on an agreed-upon market value formula. The only person who was not happy with this arrangement was Sarah. She really didn't like the fact that I was investing in startups, so I stopped telling her about it. My accounting corporation's revenues were not where they thought they should be. Instead of income, I was building net worth, but it wasn't showing up on my balance sheet because the shares I purchased were valued at the actual purchase price, which was quite low. Because I have built a staff with deep knowledge and capabilities, I have had the luxury of spending more time with my children. 3 months into tax season, it was a completely different story. I tried not to miss a single performance, concert, or sporting event in which they took part. I managed all the parent-teacher conferences without Sarah. These were good years as the children were delighted and Sarah and I made above-average progress for our age. Because of her knowledge and work ethic, Sarah was appointed assistant vice president of the bank, where she reported to several people. As a result of this promotion, she decided that we needed a larger, nicer home to suit her status as a bank employee. I told her that we had better wait, which she did, until next Saturday. She went to the exhibition and signed a contract to move. I was unhappy, but I couldn't do anything about it. Through my membership in the Chamber of Commerce, I became friends with several loan officers at her bank. They told me that Sarah called me the little accountant. This disrespect began to manifest itself at home in the form of snide remarks about how other accounting firms were doing, while I seemed to be dozing. I was not invited to join her at the Christmas party at the bank or at the summer party. Not that I thought it was a fun time, but I felt like she didn't want me around her professionally. It's time to talk to her about our relationship. On Saturday afternoon, I cornered her in the living room and asked her to sit with me for a few minutes. She looked at me with disgust and said, "It can wait? I want to wash some of your laundry?" "Thanks, but I think we need to talk about this. It can wait until evening." Can you carve out 15 minutes in your schedule? Over her shoulder as she left, I heard, "Yes, I can do it." Then she returned to her work. I didn't bring it up until the end of the day because I wanted to use it as an example of her ignoring me and thinking that what I want doesn't matter. My attempt to talk after the kids went to bed was cut short because she was tired. On Sunday morning, we couldn't talk because the kids were getting ready for Sunday school, and then they all went to church together. As the girls went outside to hang out with the neighborhood kids, I saw her pick up her bag and head toward the door. I stopped her and asked, "Do you have a few minutes to talk to me?" She snapped, "Why have you been bothering me with this all weekend? You run around me and whine like a little boy who wants his mother to pay attention to him. Can't you see I'm leaving to help my mom with her checkbook? I'll be back in an hour. Can it wait that long? It's been 24 hours since I asked for 15 minutes of your time. I can wait another hour." 4 hours had passed when she entered the house and hurried to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Of course, I would then prevent her from talking. When we finished dinner, I turned to her. "I think now is the right time to talk," which brought an indignant expression on her face. "I think we are growing more and more distant from each other, and I am very worried about our marriage." Sarah's fork clattered onto her plate and the girls turned their heads to look at me. "We don't talk to each other like we used to, and I feel like you don't respect me as a husband. I think we need to discuss this before it becomes a real problem." Gritting her teeth, she replied, "Now is not the time or place for this conversation. I'm surprised you brought this up in front of the girls. You should be ashamed of yourself. Sarah, by your actions, by ignoring me for 30 hours after I asked to talk, you have once again shut me out. Is there something going on here that I should know about?" She pushed back her chair, took her plate to the kitchen, and left the house. Well, I think our conversation took less time than I expected. My daughters were shocked by this confrontation. Miranda asked, "Are we all getting divorced?" With tears in his eyes, I calmly replied, "No, honey, no one gets divorced. Do you remember how you and your sister sometimes quarreled? So moms and dads sometimes quarrel too. But that doesn't mean we don't love each other or don't love you and Hannah. Mom didn't run away from home, she just went for a ride." This seemed to calm them both, but it didn't calm me. I cleaned up the kitchen, did a little work in the office, then put the girls and myself to bed. I went to the bedroom. If she doesn't like it, she can sleep on the sofa. It was already close to midnight when she entered the bedroom. She undressed and walked over to the bed. I lifted the blanket so she could join me. She pressed herself close to me and said, "I'm not saying I was wrong, but I will try to treat you with the respect that I want from my husband." I hugged her and whispered, "I think it's wonderful. I want to be the best husband for you." This calmed the situation in the house for a while. A few years later, she was named Vice President of Regulatory Compliance, which meant studying and ensuring the bank's compliance with the rules and regulations of the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, and the Comptroller of the Currency. She had the perfect philosophy for the role. In her opinion, no action could be taken that was not specifically approved by the appropriate governing body. This is completely the opposite of my philosophy. As long as there is no rule against it, everything is legal. Can there be any doubt that this caused discord in our family? It's good that she didn't know about my investments. They were legal, but fiscal officials like her didn't approve of them. Around this time, she started going to bachelorette parties on Tuesdays. The longer she attended these events, the later she returned home. The children were already 16 and 14 years old, so they did not need a nanny, but they needed parental control and participation. I was always there for them. One Tuesday evening, I heard swearing coming from the master bathroom and went upstairs to see what happened. She stood at the sink and shouted, "Damn, damn, damn. What's the matter?" She growled as if I had left shit in the sink. "My damn wedding ring fell into the sink. Do you think you have a chance to save him, or should I call a plumber?" I really didn't like the hints about my abilities. Looking under the sink, I said, "If it's left in the siphon, I'll take it out. It'll only take a minute." And again, in an accusatory tone, as if I had dropped the ring, she replied, "Don't worry, I won't need it today anyway." Wow, I thought. You're going on a date, but you don't need wedding rings. This alarmed me. and I urgently needed additional information. I understood that with the current bitchy attitude, it is better to remain silent but be vigilant. Taking a quick look at her, I saw that she had retired to the bedroom and was putting on a sexy thong. Lingerie I've never seen before. She tried to avoid me looking at the way she dressed. "Girls' night out? Just like any other Tuesday. Don't you remember?" she snapped. Feeling like I wasn't getting anywhere, I went to the garage to get some pliers to remove the siphon. She slipped out of the house without saying a word. Since the drain was on her half of the double sink, I had to move a bunch of her stuff under the sink before I could get to the trap. I was surprised when I saw an ordinary brown toilet paper box. I was even more surprised when, looking inside, I saw a set for enema and douching. What the hell? If anything, she constantly complained of irritable bowel syndrome and diarrhea. Although I thought it was irritable bitch syndrome. Since when did she need to douche? As I sorted through the contents, I discovered that the enema nozzle was wet. This is serious. It's probably true. The husband is always the last to know about it. But what do I actually know right now? Who knows? When working on a new business plan, I always tried to find out absolutely everything I could about the company, both good and bad. That's exactly what I'll do. I'll start my research right now. Not quite yet, since I still needed to crawl under the sink to find her damn ring. Maybe she'll need it, maybe she won't. Time will show. I took a pencil and marked it on the floor where the brown box stood. I wanted to see if it would be moved within the next week. I also took a photo of a couple of the items to see if she put the set back in the box the same way I put it. She returned home around midnight, undressed, closed the bathroom door, and began to shower. I tried to pretend that I was sleeping, but if she touched my chest, she would find that my heart was beating like crazy. She flopped into bed hard enough that I felt like I had to act like I'd just woken up. Then I heard her giggle lightly. The next morning, I got up early, mainly because I couldn't sleep. I took the precaution of closing the bathroom door before taking a shower. True, I wanted to check the brown box, and, of course, the box was moved. The douche tip was still wet, and the box was an inch off my line. Enema before a night walk and douching on the way to bed. Someone is having serious sex. Using a Ziploc bag, I carefully removed her smelly thong and sent it off to be tested for biological substances. Since I was an accountant, I was very familiar with what happens to the distribution of property in a divorce. I have conducted many assessments for husbands and wives in divorce. Sarah will have the house until the girls go to college, and I will pay child support for them, and won't be able to be with them as often as I am now. I probably won't pay child support to Sarah if my investment doesn't count. She thinks they're worthless, just like I do. I wasn't going to pay for a house where she could have fun with another guy while my girls were left unattended. This shouldn't have happened. Now that I had the information I needed, I began to create a plan of action. The key point for me was maintaining custody of my girls. I can always make money, I proved it. I have proven that I am a good father. Now I need to prove that she is a bad mother. Poison came to mind, not chemical, but emotional. Sarah is a perfectionist and expects excellence from her employees and family. When something goes wrong, it drives her crazy. The simplest problems become huge for her. When she loses her temper, she becomes mean to her employees, me and the children. I use her poison to alienate my children so they will want to stay with me after the divorce. Then the house and girls will remain with me. Quietly, I slipped over to her alarm clock and turned it off. She hates people who are late for work. After her late and obviously busy night, she might have liked to sleep a little longer. The children came for breakfast, asked where Mom was, and I told them that she had arrived late and would probably sleep a little longer. They understood, since they liked to sleep when they could. After watching the conversations she had on her cell phone late into the night, I pulled up the playlist of her videos and pressed play on mute. Hopefully, by the time she gets up, the cell phone will be dead. She has a meeting with her staff on Wednesday morning, which she says is very important. An hour later, I hear a scream and my name. It turns out that it was my fault that she overslept after having sex with some guy late last night. I took the opportunity to hide from her screams by going into the garage. One of the tires had let out enough air to trigger the instrument warning light on her Lexus. She hates it when an alert blocks her screen. She'll go crazy if she stares at this screen all the way to work. Hannah and Miranda did not escape her wrath. She rushed around the house trying to get dressed, do her hair, and put on makeup at the same time. While in the garage, I changed the door setting to lock so that it couldn't open the roller door. As would be expected when leaving the garage, she touched the opening mechanism and did not notice that the door did not rise. She slammed backwards into the garage door, crushing the two bottom panels. The three of us walked to the door and saw, but did not hear, a screaming woman hitting the steering wheel. As she moved the Lexus forward, I straightened the panels and lifted the door, creating a terrible squeak. Sarah roared out of the garage, narrowly missing a mailbox. This will be more fun than I thought. I wonder what she will do when she tries to call the office with a dead cell phone. The less I hear about her, the better. I hugged Hannah and Miranda and told them, "Mom is a little stressed right now. She'll be better when she gets home tonight. She still loves you, but not so much me." After that, all three of us laughed. The alarm clock in our bedroom was now set to maximum volume. I let her make sure the alarm was on. Unlike my wife, I came to work on time this morning. My employees always know it's a good day when I walk in the door whistling. My good mood continued until 10 a.m. when my cell phone vibrated so loudly that it almost fell off the table. I thought, gee, I guess it's my dear wife calling. "Good morning, my dear." That was all I had time to say before the foul language started. A shrill voice came from the phone. "You should get your ass over here and fix my tire." I almost died driving this dangerous car. If you had let me take the Mercedes I wanted, we wouldn't have this problem. "Now, fix it," I said casually. "You have AAA insurance. All you have to do is call them and they'll take care of it." "Fuck you," was her answer. Since the morning had gone so well, I told my assistant that I had a few things to do and would be back after lunch. The first thing I did was go to a security store and buy some small cameras for the house and a voice recorder to hide in her purse. I needed to know my enemies and what they were doing. Next stop was returning home and setting up cameras in the living room and our bedroom. I made the panels in the garage usable, but they weren't pretty. They shouted, "Some stupid bitch back it into us," so that all the neighbors could see and grin. When I returned to work, I went through all my personal banking and investment files. We only had one joint credit card, and I canceled it. The only joint bank account was for household needs, so I left it open, but reminded myself to make sure that half of it went into the account every payday. As usual, I got home before Sarah and was preparing dinner when I heard the garage door creak and groan as it opened. The FBI couldn't have knocked down the door any harder than Sarah did. Both girls, sitting at the kitchen table, screamed. The witch came up to me very menacingly and said, "I've never had such a shitty day. I'll go upstairs and take a soak in my bath." The girls and I had a quiet dinner, whispering like 12-year-old children. I went upstairs and asked her if she wanted to have dinner, and she threw a bar of soap at me and growled, "If I wanted to have dinner, I would have told you. Now leave me alone." This was the perfect time to make a small slit in her pursy and place the recorder inside the lining. I went downstairs and fell asleep on the sofa in the living room. I didn't want to end up in the same bed with her when her alarm clock went off at full volume tomorrow morning. The explosion of the latest rap song on the alarm clock radio, preceded by a shrill "Your mother" from my wife, followed by the screams of two terrified teenagers. It is unlikely that any U.S. Marine sergeant would have made more noise in the early morning than the ladies in my house that day. While Sarah was thrashing around in the bathroom, I took the opportunity to go to the garage and smear the dark brown grease from my lawnmower on the seat of her car. After she sits on this lubricant on the way to work, others may think that she shit herself on the way. This time literally, not figuratively. We received from her about the same amount of bile and rage as the night before. I also smeared the skirt she was wearing the day before, just to be convincing and to hope that there would be someone to blame it on. Her assistant, Linda, who was married to one of my friends, called me and told me about how Sarah discovered her stained skirt. She told me that Hurricane Sarah had gained strength and everyone should be on alert. Over the next few days, I stopped tormenting her. All sorts of little things began to happen, For example, one of the 2 diamond earrings left on the table disappeared. The dress she wore last Tuesday had a red wine stain that she didn't remember having. The lining on her favorite shoes began to peel off. Because I knew where her password book was, many of the sites she used refused her entry. When she drove her Lexus, turned a corner or pressed the brake, a ball from a bearing would roll around in the door of her car. Every day or so, some little thing could go wrong. For her it was death by 1,000 cuts, and we are now at the 500 level. And now, the biggest test. On Tuesday after work, she returned home to change clothes and go to a bachelorette party. She didn't say a word to anyone in the house. She made sure the bathroom door was locked before undressing. Everything was the same as the previous Tuesday, including the wet enema tip. Everything was exactly the same, except that I was following her using the locator on her mobile phone. According to her cell phone locator, her first stop that evening was Bonefish Grill. From Bonefish, she went to the dance bar O'Hara's. I wasn't interested in what she did in the club. I was interested in who she left with. I had been monitoring her movements from the house, so I got out and started driving up to the O'Hare to follow her to her next location. Just as I was finishing my coffee in the parking lot, Sarah and some guy walked out holding hands. They hugged each other and kissed for a long time before going their separate ways. He left in his car, and she followed. I kept up with them for a block, leaving the locator to do its job. The money bags were dragged to Motel Number 6, located near the highway. From the street, I saw that they entered a room with an external entrance. Since they would be there for a couple of hours, I pulled into the parking lot and wrote down the make, model, and license plate number of her boyfriend's car. While in a dark parking lot, I let enough air out of the driver's side front tire to make it noticeable and again sent a low tire pressure signal to the dash. There was a truck in the parking lot, so I found a piece of grease and put it on the windshield. I knew perfectly well that the first thing she would do was turn on the wipers. Then the entire windshield will turn into a blinding mess. It will be interesting to listen tomorrow to what was recorded on the voice recorder in her purse. The information I needed would now be in my hands, and I was only halfway to my goal of blowing it up. After 1 o'clock in the morning, she entered the bedroom, undressed, and went into the bathroom, slamming the door. It was probably time for her to shower and douche. She didn't touch her alarm clock or phone that night. I wanted these events to appear random. A couple of hours later, when she was already snoring, I crawled out of bed and took the recorder out of her purse. I loaded it into my laptop, charged it, and put it in her purse. The next morning, when Sarah and the girls were not at home, I listened to the recording. It was noisy at dinner and at the club, but the voice recorder was quite effective at capturing the activity at Motel 6. I found out that her boyfriend's name was Keith, and that they both enjoyed each other. I also learned that they partied every Tuesday night and spent every other Thursday at the Hyatt during business hours. It was Sarah's turn to book a room at the Hyatt, and they laughed at the conservative bank president for his unknowing complicity. They used their corporate cards to pay for luxury sex at the Hyatt. Since the bank's main office was located near the Hyatt, they often used its services to meet with bank employees from other cities. "So when are you planning to divorce your little accountant husband?" "Right after my daughter Miranda leaves for college."